What's up, everybody? Welcome to DFS by the Numbers. These are my NFL DFS core plays for Week 5. Really looking forward to getting into it and breaking it all down. Before we do so, if you guys can please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. That'd be much appreciated. You can also check me out on Pub Sports Radio Wednesday and Friday with Billy, and then also with Jamie Wednesday as well, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and then on Sunday, 10 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time as well. So lots going on this NFL week. Looking forward to getting into some core plays here, and as always, going to give my favorite couple plays from each position. Later in the week, I'll be getting out my full player pool video along with talking some strategy, all the good stuff, ownership, all the good stuff there. So I say we get into it. Starting with the quarterbacks, there's going to be two that I will give out, and there's a ton of injury news to monitor, so there's going to be a lot of things that do stick out later in the week, you got to imagine. We'll talk about some of it, but in terms of the quarterbacks, Kyla Murray is the one that is sticking out to me. Up top, 49.5 point total, where Arizona is going to be 5.5 point favorites. He has 8,000. He's averaging 29.5 DraftKings points. I think it's a really good matchup here against San Francisco, who has given up the third most DraftKings points to opposing quarterbacks. San Francisco's defense has not looked all that great this year, and with Kyler Murray, you always get that rushing yard upside. I would like to see some more rushing upside. I mean, 6 rushing attempts in Week 4. He had 7 in Week 3, 5 in Week 2, but he's still getting rushing attempts regardless. Has, 3 touchdowns in terms of rushing touchdowns on the year as well. So I think Kyler Murray is always a very intriguing spot, and I do like the matchup here against San Francisco. Moving on, Trey Lance. So if Jimmy Garoppolo is out, I think Trey Lance is a very intriguing option. Going against Arizona here, and the San Francisco is 5.5 point underdogs, so you got to expect they're going to be projected to be trailing, which means more throwing. And with Lance, you do have some solid rushing yard upside as well. And yeah, I do like the options you have to stack with Lance as well, right? You have Kittle, you have a Samuel, who we'll talk about as well. So yeah, I think Trey Lance is a very intriguing option, especially at this price tag. With the matchup, with the game script, pretty high total, 49.5 points, which I think is one of the high. I think it's like third highest total on the slate there. So I think Trey Lance at that price tag, if Jimmy G is out, is very, very intriguing to me. I do like him quite a bit, but we'll see if Jimmy G is indeed out. If he is, I like him. If he's not, obviously not going to play him. So Lance is somebody to keep your eye out for. So getting to the running backs, Derrick Henry, going to go right back to him. Last week, he scored 28.7 DraftKings points. He had 33 rushing attempts and also had 2 targets, 2 receptions as well. And going right back to him against Jacksonville, who it seems like Derrick Henry always has these monster games against the Jaguars. I don't know what it is. I don't know what he has against Jacksonville, but it seems like every time he does play Jacksonville, it's a monster game, and I do expect it here as well. You got a positive game script. The Titans are 4-point favorites, and they are at Jacksonville as well. And yeah, I like Derrick Henry quite a bit. Jacksonville's run defense ranks 27th against opposing running backs. And like I said, positive game script. It's the 5th highest total on the slate. Can't go wrong with Derrick Henry. And I guess one thing that I never really liked about Derrick Henry was the fact that he's not really involved in the passing game. But this year he actually is. 2 receptions last week, 3 in Week 3, had 6 in Week 2. I talked about how he had more receptions than Kamara last week. I still think that's still true, or if it's not, it's very close. So yeah, I think Derrick Henry is a phenomenal option at 9K. I love the matchup, I love the game script, and I love the fact that they are indeed passing the ball more than usual. So give me Derrick Henry at this price tag. Going to be somebody I make a priority to go up and get in my lineups. And up top there is also Dalvin Cook, who I do like as well. If Christian McCaffrey does return, I like McCaffrey as well, but I think Henry's in a smash spot here. So Zeke Elliott, he is questionable, but they're looking like he's going to come back to practice tomorrow. If he does not play, that makes Pollard probably the best play on the slate, but you got to imagine he will play. And if he does, I do like Zeke Elliott here going against the Giants. 52.5 point total, which is the highest on the slate. They are 7-point favorites. You get a positive game script here, and it's a pretty good matchup against the Giants defense, who's given up the 5th most DraftKings points to opposing running backs thus far, and he is averaging at least 20 touches in his last couple games. We see that he had 20 carries in Week 4 against Carolina, also had 1 target. He had 17 carries in Week 3, 3 receptions as well. And the thing with the Dallas offense is, typically they're a team that passes the ball a lot. Like even in Week 1, I think Dak Prescott threw the ball like 58 times, and when he did play last year, Dak was throwing the ball a ton, but we're seeing that not be the case now. I think Dak has thrown the ball like less than 30 times in his last 3 games, which is very weird, but they're really making it a focus to get these Dallas running backs the ball, especially Zeke Elliott here. So, the volume's definitely there. I think the matchup's definitely there. And again, the highest total on the entire slate at 52.5 points. I think Zeke Elliott is in a phenomenal spot. I love the game script as well. I love that they are 7-point favorites, and I think they're going to continue to run the ball. It's been working for them, so I do expect that to continue there. So give me Zeke Elliott at that price tag. Damien Williams, this one is an interesting one. So he is 5,600. He's very cheap, 44-point total, where the Bears are going to be 5-point underdogs. And David Montgomery is out, so Williams should be the lead guide here. Should have some catching upside as well to go with. So I think Williams is a very cheap option, but I'll be honest, there's going to more than likely be a ton of things that do open up throughout the week. I think, Fournette could be somebody to look at if Bernard is out. I think P. Ryan could be somebody to look at if Mixon is out. And we'll have to monitor the injury news. And me and Jamie will talk about that on Football Diehards, 10 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, because there's going to, more than likely be a lot more things that do open up. But right now, as of now, Damien Williams looks to be my cheap guy, but that can very well change with the injury news coming within the next couple of days here. Getting into the wide receivers, Devonte Adams, I think it's a great time to go back to him against Cincinnati, 51-point total, where the Packers are 3-point favorites. He is 8,200, which he did he get priced up 300? Yeah, he got priced up 300 there. Had a poor game against Pittsburgh. Still had 11 targets though in a tough matchup. Pittsburgh's not the easiest defense in the world. I think it's gonna be a better matchup here. He had 12.4 DraftKings points last week. I think it's a great bounce back spot. He is still averaging 11.25 targets per week. And as always, Devonte Adams has a ton of upside. So hopefully that poor game does limit some of the ownership, but I do expect him to still be very, very high owned. I think it's a great spot for Adams, averaging 20.1 DraftKings points. I think it's a good spot for him to bounce back. And again, he's just getting so much targets, and the upside will always be there. 18 targets in Week 3 against San Francisco. So I like Devonte Adams. If I was to go up and pay for a wide receiver, it would be that guy. Going down a little bit, we'll talk about some value plays here. Jalen Waddle, 4,800. He's somebody that does stick out, and it was really weird last week. Jalen Waddle, I think on the very first drive, he had 3 receptions on the very first drive, and after that did absolutely nothing. But, we see that Will Fuller is now on the IR, and he's still averaging 7.5 targets per week, which at this price tag seems way too cheap. And, they are 10-point underdogs in this game against Tampa Bay. And what do you typically do against Tampa Bay? And that is not run the ball. Tampa Bay has one of the best, if not the best, run defenses in the league. So you got to expect that Miami's going to come out throwing the ball a ton, especially considering they are 10-point dogs. So I think it's a great spot for Waddle, especially with Fuller on the IR. I think it's a great spot for him to bounce back. And even then, he's getting a ton of targets just for this price tag. It seems way too cheap for Waddle, 4,800. Marvin Jones Jr., another cheap guy, 48.5 point total going against Tennessee. He's 5,700. So Chark is out, I think, for the remainder of the season, I saw. So, Jones should see an increase of target share for sure. Amazing matchup here for Jones. Tennessee has given up the most DraftKings points to opposing wide receivers thus far. So, I think he's in a great spot. Did not have the best game last week. Only 3 targets, 3 receptions, 5.4 DraftKings points. But against Arizona, had 8 targets. Against Denver, 11 targets. Against Houston, 9 targets. I think it's a great bounce-back spot, especially against Tennessee, who, again, has given it the most DraftKings points to opposing wide receivers. And it's a pretty solid total as well, 48.5 DraftKings points, where Jacksonville is going to be 4-point dogs, which means they're going to be trailing, which means probably some passing as well. So give me Jones Jr. at this price tag, another cheap option that I do like. So Deebo Samuel, going against Arizona, and I don't mind the Lance Samuel stack this week at all. And Deebo Samuel looks to be the number 1 option on the 49ers in terms of the wide receivers, tight ends, all that. 42 targets on the year. Ayuk has 11, and Kittle has only 29. So he has more targets than Ayuk and Kittle combined, which if you told me that at the beginning of the year, I would have called you absolutely crazy, but here we are. And, Samuel has been looking phenomenal this year. Good matchup against Arizona in a game that they're projected to be trailing. 25.2 DraftKings points on average, 12 targets in Week 4, 10 in Week 3, 8 in Week 2, and 12 targets in Week 1. He's getting a ton of targets, and he's being very productive as well. 3 touchdowns on the year. I think Deebo Samuel is a very good option to go up and grab at 7,100. All right, and then I do want to touch on just one tight end. We'll talk about a couple more later in the week, but yeah, Kittle sticks out to me. Really in love with this San Francisco offense this week. Touched on Kittle, touched on Samuel. touched on Lance. Wouldn't be shocked if I had some lineups with all three of those in there. But yeah, Kittle, he still has, 29 targets on the year. I wish it would go up a little bit more. Seems low for Kittle, but he's in a good spot here against Arizona. He did have 11 targets last week, and he's still averaging over 7 targets. So it's not like they're completely not giving him the ball. I'm just used to Kittle getting like a ton more targets. But still, solid game script. And a game that projected to be trailing against Arizona here. And it just seems cheap, right? It seems way too cheap for Kittle. I know he hasn't been the best as of late, but it just seems way too cheap for Kittle, right? 5,600. He's still got 11 targets in week 4, 9 in week 3, 4 in week 2, 5 in week 1. I think it's a great spot for Kittle here. Yeah, 5,600 is going to be the cheapest he's been all year, actually. So, yeah, I like Kittle. No touchdowns on the year yet, so maybe this will be the week, especially in a game like this that is projected to be pretty high scoring. So I do like Kittle in terms of a tight end. We'll talk about some others later in the week, and we'll also touch on some defenses later in the week as well. But yeah, guys, that's about it. Those are the plays that are sticking out midweek for me. A lot is going to change. There's a ton of injury news that still needs to come out throughout the week. We'll see who's going to play, who's not going to play. We'll talk about it more. If you want to check out other live streams, Pub Sports Radio, me and Billy will be going live 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, and then me and Jamie will be going live at 10 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. That's when we'll give the most up-to-date information, talk about ownership strategy, all the good stuff. So check those out. Leave a like. My full player poll will be out sometime later this week, and also some showdown content as well. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on all of that. That's about it, guys. Good luck for week 5. Cannot wait for another week of NFL. See you guys.